Dead man lives, then dies again. A family in Peru was both shocked and distressed to discover their dead family member still breathing at his own funeral. The unfortunate 24-year-old had undergone a root canal where he was reportedly given diazepam, aka valium. He began developing fever and chills soon after and was taken to hospital, where he was pronounced dead. But at the wake, grieving relatives were shocked to notice the man exhibiting signs of life and immediately called a doctor. After the doctor confirmed he still had vital signs, the man was taken from the coffin and transferred to a hospital, only to be confirmed dead. Again. No, really. The man is now legitimately dead, but his family believes he was very much alive at his funeral and merely sedated due to the dental drugs. Not dead yet.
Pregnant teenage bride buried alive, gets rescued, dies again. 16-year-old Nece Perez was buried alive in La Entrada, Honduras. She was 3 months pregnant and fell unconscious in her bathroom during the night after reportedly having a panic attack from hearing gunfire outside her home. Her religious parents called a priest to perform an exorcism because they thought she was possessed by a demon. When that didn't work, they took her to a hospital where she was pronounced dead 3 hours later. Perez had recently been married, so she was buried in her wedding dress. When her husband went to visit her grave the next day, he heard screaming coming from inside the coffin. He ran to get help and relatives came to rescue, smashing the mausoleum open and taking out the coffin. She reportedly had bruises and scratches on her face from trying to escape the grave after being buried alive. She was unconscious and taken to the hospital inside the coffin. Doctors were unable to resuscitate her and she was pronounced dead again.
Time of death declaration and utter fail. Woman still alive. In Germany, an undertaker was shocked when one of his clients pushed open the coffin lid and asked where she was. In fact, he was so shocked he passed out. After returning to his senses, the man realized it wasn't the start of the zombie apocalypse and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived and confirmed that the 92-year-old woman did indeed have a pulse. She was then rushed to hospital where she died again 2 days later. The nursing home staff were interviewed and questioned how one of their residents came to be diagnosed as dead, when she in fact wasn't. One of the staff had reportedly discovered the elderly woman in the morning and contacted their local on-staff doctor to check on her. The doctor pronounced her death and arrangements were made to move her body to the morgue, where the undertaker got the shock of his life. Hopefully, the 92-year-old grandmother won't have a moment of deja vu waking up in a coffin. Again. Doctors pronounce man dead, then he miraculously comes back to life. In Hubei, located in central China, the family of a man doctors had pronounced dead was preparing to bury their loved one when they noticed that the corpse was breathing and weeping. The family rushed Mr. Guo, age 45, back to the hospital as quickly as possible, where doctors were shocked to discover they were wrong. Mr. Guo was a heavy smoker and had been since he was 16. He was known to smoke at least 2 packs of cigarettes a day and could often finish a single pack in just 3 hours. 3 months ago, Mr. Guo had been talking to friends and smoking when he suddenly collapsed. His friends had rushed him to hospital and doctors said Mr. Guo had suffered severe cerebral hemorrhaging and that his chances for survival were less than 5%. Mr. Guo remained in a coma for almost 3 months. Then one morning the doctors pronounced him dead and informed his family they could take him home to be buried. Who'd have thought he'd surprise them all and resurrect himself? Doctors said they will have to wait until Mr. Guo wakes up to assess the extent of the damage to his brain. Cerebral hemorrhages can cause extensive brain damage that will affect a person's speech, memories, and physical coordination. But if Mr. Guo wakes up hungry for brains, everyone better be ready to.
Grandfather returns home months after family had him cremated. Imagine you went for a walk one day, had a few drinks along the way, and came home months later to realize everyone thought you were dead. That's what happened to 74-year-old Miguel Angel Gomar de Luna in Chihuahua, Mexico, who now has to prove he's still alive. The old man was living at a nursing home late last year when one day he snuck away and did not return. On Christmas Day, his family was alerted that he'd gone missing. They searched for weeks, but there was no trace of him anywhere. After some time had passed, police recovered a badly decomposed body of a man that fit Miguel's description. The body was difficult to identify, but Miguel's daughter was told if they could not confirm it was him, the body would not be released to the family. She signed papers to claim that the body was indeed that of her dad's and held a funeral days later, the body cremated. You can imagine the shock they must have felt when on February 24th, police contacted her to say her father was found on the street, alive. When he was brought home, he was in rough shape, bandages around his head and scars on his face. When asked what happened, he said he'd just gone for a walk. He'd also reportedly been drinking the entire time. Talk about a bender. His family grateful for his return, they're now tasked with reclaiming his identity, seeing as he's been legally declared dead.
Dead Greek woman heard screaming and banging in her coffin. A 45-year-old woman was reportedly buried alive and heard screaming and banging from inside her coffin in a Greek cemetery on Thursday. The unidentified woman was declared dead by doctors treating her for cancer. However, shortly after the last of her relatives left the cemetery after her burial, the woman reportedly woke up and started banging and screaming inside the coffin. Nearby residents and children reportedly heard her shouting for help from inside the grave and called the authorities. Cemetery workers desperately plowed the fresh grave to unearth the woman, but she apparently had suffocated to death inside the coffin. However, a doctor who examined the woman's body found her to be in a state of rigor mortis and found no evidence of asphyxiation in the coffin.